Greetings and welcome. My name is Mike Bankhead. I am your host. I am a bass player and songwriter from the Gem City, Dayton, Ohio. And I am late with this episode. It took me extra time to get it edited. And I really wanted to put it up Wednesday, and that didn't happen. And I really wanted to put it up this morning, and that didn't happen. So you are getting this episode on Friday afternoon. Maybe you can spend your weekend listening to the You Could Be My Air Miss podcast. My guest today is a fascinating individual from the province of Nova Scotia, slightly to my north. Singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist Mary Beth Carty. Here we go. Hey there, Mary Beth Carty.
Hey, Mike.
You are in New Scotland, correct?
Well, that is one way to put it. Nova Scotia, we use the Latin. So
you do use the Latin. But like, if you don't speak Latin, it's New Scotland, right? And
there's a lot of like brands that go by New Scotland. Like there's a brewery, and there used to be a recording studio called New Scotland. There's a t-shirt company. So yeah, it's a thing for sure.
The reason I wanted to start with that is where you are influences the kind of music you make. And I would like you to talk about that for a bit to start.
Sure, yeah. It's so true. Like, and speaking of New Scotland, my father is from Old Scotland, so that's been an influence on my music as well. So the town I grew up in, Antigonish, is the home of the oldest continuous running Highland Games in North America. That's like our claim to fame here. So when I was growing up, I wasn't very good at sports. My sport was Highland dancing. So yeah, and it's very, like, if you've ever seen Highland dancing, it's very athletic. You're constantly jumping on one foot, and then you have your arms in the air. So it's an art, but it's also sport. And where am I going with this? Yeah, where I'm from, yeah, I mean, so I grew up sort of, yeah, it's called Nova Scotia, New Scotland for a reason. It's like 200 years ago, thousands upon thousands of refugees immigrated here from Scotland after there was like some colonialism happening in that area. And you'll hear, like, even today, there's referendums happening for Scotland to go back to its independent state. So it's sort of like, yeah, it's 200-year-old history, but it's still with us today. But anyway, yeah, so the music I make is highly influenced by my Scottish roots, but also like before this place was called Nova Scotia, New Scotland, it was Acadie. So I sing in French as well. And before that, it was called Mi'kmaq. And on my this album, you'll hear some Mi'kmaq influences as well, the indigenous culture, where I still have friends, of course, who speak Mi'kmaq. And like the other day, I was at a party and everyone was speaking Mi'kmaq. So yeah, it's just a cool place to be because there's so many languages happening in the course of my run of a day. I might speak a couple languages. So yeah, so that's what this new album is, multilingual.
That's awesome. Diversity is a good thing, and I kind of wish there were more. I mean, there were natives here, of course, but they are long gone, and it's kind of a shame because you lose uniqueness of culture, and I'm a language nerd, and I think languages are cool, and I would totally have learned an indigenous one if there was someone here to teach me. You mentioned the album. That would be this. Now, you can't see it if you're listening to this podcast because it is an audio podcast, but I'm holding up Crossing the Causeway, Mary Beth Carty's new record, which just came out on Friday, November 25th. So, Mary Beth, tell us about this record.
Yeah, I was just, before coming on this podcast, I was just doing a written interview, and one of the questions was, what is your inspiration behind making this? And my answer was I think if I peel everything away, I wanted to make a traditional album because that's what kind of music I've been playing live for the past number of years, and I just didn't have a traditional solo album. So that's one really practical reason. But really, when I think about it, it's kind of, I just want to share the therapeutic quality of this kind of music and culture. It's a lot of dancing. I was I was just talking about there's this square dance on Monday nights during the summer on Cape Breton Island in this middle of nowhere place called Brook Village. And the last time I went there, I was thought to myself, like, this is the most fun that a human being can have on the planet Earth. And I just wanted to share that sort of like excitement, that ecstasy that you feel when you go to a dance and sort of, yeah. So the album is kind of like, yeah, therapy. That music is a therapy for me. And so it's something I want to share with the rest of the world.
You mentioned this is traditional. So all of these songs are they all from Nova Scotia, or some of them from the old world as well?
That's a good question. So it's such a mixed bag on this album. Even within like a couple of songs, they're medleys. So it's like there's maybe like 4 fiddle tunes and like 3 songs all mashed up together in a 3-minute piece. So, but then I have some of my own original songs on there. There's some songs from the old world, and of course they would have come over at some point. So yeah, a lot of them, it's like, that's the cool thing about traditional music. You don't really know who, when, or where the song was written. But yeah, most of them were collected here. So I would go to the archives, and if you go to the archives, you can listen to these old reel-to-reel tapes that these folklorists would have taken around this big big machine into people's houses in like the 30s, 40s, 50s, even up to the 80s. One of the songs that I did on the album was collected in the 1980s, and they would just record people singing at home. And I did a number of songs like that I found in the archives around here. And then some of them are like composed by local composers, like fiddle tune instrumental composers, that were made here. So there's some that were made here and some that were made elsewhere.
How long did it take you to make this album, from the time you started recording to release date?
I started, my first day in the studio was in November of 2019, and I just put it out November of
so 3 years.
That's 3 years, but even before that, there's the conception of it, and then some of those songs that are on there I've been singing for at least 10 years. So
yeah, I should point out, because like a good researcher, I read your bio on your website, and you also sent me a press release for the record, which we will talk about more in the second podcast, because the press release is in French and I'm not going to read anything from it on the English podcast. But you're a really experienced musician that has a pretty great deal of touring experience. You said you've toured in North America and in Europe. Can you, this just, I'm very jealous, I've never done that. Can you talk about some of your touring experiences?
And it's funny, and for the American listeners, I've actually never toured in the States, just playing on cruise ships on the Eastern Seaboard. So, but I have been so lucky to play in every province in Canada, so that when I was young, an aspiring musician, I had only been as far as Toronto, in Canada. I had never been west to any of the Western areas. So that came true through music. And as for the European tours, I used to play with this duo in Bête Mollette, and we sang in French. And it was in the MySpace era that someone in France heard our record and said, hey, we'd love to organize a tour for you. And so we did like 3 or 4 tours with this production company. And then, I got to tour in Austria with an Irish kind of theme tour, and the most incredible experience of my life, I would say, I was invited by the Canadian Embassy to perform in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda one year, and that was just an amazing trip.
That's awesome. To be able to experience different cultures and and share one's music with them is a pretty cool thing.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you. Just I love meeting new people and traveling. So music is a great career for anyone who Who loves those things?
Indeed. Do you have plans to go on the road to support the new record?
Well, I'm going to Halifax, the capital city of Nova Scotia, this weekend.
That counts.
Yeah, and I'm like, where else am I going before the end of the year? There's a little community called Seaforth, and also a little town called New Glasgow that I'm going to be playing in. And for the new year, I'm like, okay, I gotta go a little further afield. So I really hope to do a little CD release mini tour in the new year.
Excellent. The Causeway is actually a real place.
Yeah, it's this crazy bridge that links the island of Cape Breton to mainland Nova Scotia. It was, yeah.
So what made you select the act of crossing that bridge for your album title?
Yeah, it's Mike, if you ever get the chance to visit Nova Scotia, and like you'll get this feeling. It's this feeling that you get when you cross over that bridge. I don't know. It's something, you're going to the end of the world. It's sort of like it's the edge of North America, but you're going to, a very special place, Cape Breton. It's just because for the longest time there was no bridge linking it. You could only get there by ferry. And for that reason, the culture sort of was isolated and stayed free of outside influence for longer than where I'm from. I'm only from 20 minutes away, but it's the mainland. So sometimes, as far as some people are concerned, you may as well be from, very far away. Like you're just not from Cape Breton unless you're from Cape Breton. But anyway, yeah, why did I? Well, yeah, so the thing is with this bridge, it's not really a bridge. It's more like there's like they filled it in with earth and rocks, and they built, and it's a causeway. Well, there is a little break in it where ships can go underneath, but it's like there's this very deep mass of material. So the causeway touches the ocean floor. And so that was the concept behind my album, is like I wanted to show how all these cultures that we sometimes may think of as so different, but really their roots are so deep that we meet on the ocean floor. If that makes any sense.
Now, you mentioned this goes to Cape Breton. Based on the name, that area was not settled by Scottish people, because they wouldn't have named it after Brittany, right? Like I hear Breton, I think of someone from France who lives in Bretagne, and so am I correct in assuming that Cape Breton was founded by people from the Brittany region of France?
Well, that's a really good question, and well, if you ever come, there's this historical fortress called the Forteresse de Louisbourg that if you go there, they'll know better the answer to that question. But it's like going back in time. It's a cool historical village where everyone's dressed up in costumes and they're playing a role, and there's music and there's characters and there's a bakery and anyways. But of course there's a lot of there was that French fortress that was there way long ago. But even if you go to the capital city, there is Sydney, where I used to live. It was once called Spanish Bay. So at one point, the Spanish also called that their home, that island. They would stop there. It was, like I was saying, it's really out there on the edge of North America. So it would be a stopping point on the way to Mexico for sure, which would be much warmer and probably a lot more fun in those days. Because the Mi'kmaq, the native name for that island is Unamaki, the land of the fog. So if you open up my CD and you see it says Jalasi Unamaki, and that means welcome to the land of the fog or welcome to Cape Breton. So that island has many names, but originally Unamaki.
How many of the people from that particular First Nations group are left? It seems like there's enough to keep the language going, which is cool.
Oh, yeah. And I do, when I'm not doing my own solo stuff, there's an artist I perform with sometimes by the name of Morgan Tony, and he sings, and I'll sing with him in that language. But one of my best friends, and she's mentioned in the liner notes of the album, Tara Lewis, that was her mother's mother tongue. So like, and so whenever I go to their house, like they have parties, and yeah, like her mother's family, everyone's speaking Mi'kmaq. And there's a number of reservations on Cape Breton Island. There's Waikagama, Wagmacook, Eskasoni, Membertou, and Bodladek. And the reservation that's close to my town is Bagangek. And there's a bunch more throughout Nova Scotia. Yeah.
You have a whole lot of guest musicians on this album,
including you, Mike. Thank you so much for singing.
I wasn't going to say that, but
it was the outlying track. Like there was 13 tracks done, and that one was like there was something missing on it, and so that was when I reached out to you because I needed a male chorus. And now this is for those listening to the podcast, this is my first time actually talking to Mike, but I know him through this musicians group that we're in online. So It was really nice of you to agree to sing. So I just want to say thank you again.
Well, thank you for asking me. I don't consider myself a singer, and it was just an honor to be able to help out in any way I can. So every time I say I'm not a singer, my vocal coach, who is Sarah Jelly, who you also know, she hates it when I say I'm not a singer, but
but you are. But like
she's on this record too, by the way.
I think that probably one of the reasons people enjoy listening to your podcast is because you have a nice speaking voice, and like if you have a nice speaking voice, well, the singing just goes along with it.
That's a very optimistic approach. I mentioned the amount of collaboration. I was going to ask you, what drove you to decide to involve so many people in the record? Because you've got like a lot of other musicians on this, and many of them are not from where you live.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Like, yeah, my first solo album, it was very minimal. There was literally just me and 3 other people on it. And I decided I didn't want any harmony, backup vocals. It was just going to be like a live show with me singing, my friend Greg on the bass, his brother Brendan on percussion, and my friend Donald on, like, he's a crazy violin player. So it's just the 4 of us on that album. But then when I made this one, I just wanted it to kind of reflect like what a party in Cape Breton might sound like, kind of like, you know, like I was saying, Tara's Christmas party, or yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to have this. There's a sort of a group vocal theme running throughout the album, and it was cool during the pandemic too. Like just to get people to send things in electronically. That it totally works, and it really does sound like we're all in the same room together.
Yeah, the power of modern technology. Look how we're having this conversation, right? You're in Nova Scotia and I'm in Ohio, and there's not a whole lot of sound and video lag. I mean, obviously there's going to be some, but the future is here, it would appear.
Yeah. And then sometimes, like, the first single that I released back in 2021, it was this Gaelic song called Movahed, which is Gaelic for my mother. And
could you repeat the pronunciation, please?
Oh, yeah. So there's different accents that you could have while saying this. So don't worry about your accent or saying it wrong, but Mo for my, and the MH sort of makes a V sound of va, ed, and the R kind of turns into a TH at the end. So Movahed.
Movahed.
Yeah.
That is track 4. All right. Thank you for pronouncing it correctly for me now. Sorry for interrupting. Continue the story.
Movahed. Oh, thank you for asking. Well, for that track, we had everything done. Like my friend Colin did all the fiddle on it, and he did the fiddle solo in the middle, and he did it by the note as well, because the tune is popular as an instrumental tune here. But then I could have just gone with that. Like one fiddle, one violin is But no, I had to ask friends to layer and get this sound of different violin fiddle players. And it is a crazy, amazing, very emotional and moving thing to hear six people, different people, playing the fiddle on this like slow and wistful tune. Anyways, every time I hear it, it makes me cry. But there's something about that, like I don't really like those recordings where it's the person is singing harmony with themselves. There's something like weird I find about that. I'm not opposed to it, but yeah. So that's sort of why I wanted different people to sing and different people to layer on top. Yeah.
It gives you a different texture. Yeah, one could do one-tone harmonies. I do that plenty. But yeah, there's a different texture from having a voice that has different characteristics, even if it's going to sing the same notes.
I agree. Yeah.
So
I'm
sorry.
The camaraderie too, like even like you, a new friend, like developing that friendship through that music. And then, like, on that song, my friend Robin Kerrigan sings the harmony, and she's a close friend. And every time I hear her harmony, I think of her, so that's cool. Yeah.
You play accordion, you play guitar, and you play, how does your website put it? I'm going to make sure I don't say it wrong.
Oh, yeah.
An assortment of pocket-sized instruments.
Yeah, an assortment of pocket-sized instruments. And in case you would ask me about them, I just brought a few along.
All right, so this is going to be fun. Let's describe these. What's the metal one in your hand there?
Oh yeah, this has so many names. And if anyone out there has other names for this, for the podcast listeners, I'm just going to play it right now.
Okay.
Like, what would you call that? Like, the name I grew up calling this is not politically correct. You cannot.
So don't say it that then. I don't have a word for that because I've never seen that in my life. It sounds like that guitar thing, that guitar voice thing that Peter Frampton used to use, only that is totally not electric in any way. Listeners, I'm going to describe it. It looks like big tweezers, except for if you imagine tweezers have like a round part at one end and you put the skinny end in your mouth, and I've got no idea. I've never seen that before.
So I grew up hearing it being called a Jew's harp, but then some people call it a juice harp or a jaw harp. But in French, it has like 10 different names. In India, in Rajasthan, it's called a morsing. This is an instrument that is so old. It's one of the oldest instruments in the world, and it's found like in so many cultures all over the world. And it was way more popular in Nova Scotia, like before the advent of television. Like I hear of people saying, "Oh yeah, my grandmother played that," or my our neighbor played that, but you don't see it too much these days. And I have a lot of friends in Quebec that play this instrument. It's more popular there. But the thing about it is like these ones that I have here, they were made in Slovakia.
So Wiki has a picture of a Slovak one in the article, so they must be popular there. Wiki tells us that it's called also a vargan or a gugao or a gimbard or an ozak harp. And I've never heard of any of those things. Wiki also says the harp originated in China and has no relation to the Jewish people.
Yeah. It's popular. It was popular in China and Mongolia. And my father from Scotland, he said they call it a trump. But in Gaelic, it's called a trombe, kind of like trombone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like what to call this instrument. So in French,
never seen that before. That's interesting. All right, you've got something else there that looked like a basket.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that actually a basket?
This is a little shaker. Now, this is like a commercial one, Toka, that I got at the music store. But a friend of mine she was in Ghana and she brought back a little one, and it was like a hand woven with different colors. But so there's a little bit of that on the album as well. I left my bag of other pocket-sized instruments in the car, but one that I play is called the bones. It's like makes a clickety clack sound, and people think it's the spoons. But if you want to get on a bones player's bad side, then say you play the spoons. It's just not the thing to say.
Is that the thing they kind of look like chopsticks in your hands?
Yes.
All right. They kind of remind me of castanets, just differently shaped.
Yeah, people say that. I learned as well that instrument while I was living in Quebec, and I learned on paint sticks cut in half.
Wow. How did you learn accordion? That's a notoriously difficult instrument to learn how to play.
It is. Yeah. I used to play the piano, and then, at some point, it's hard to carry a piano around.
That is true.
So then I learned to play the guitar because it was far more portable. And then one day I was at a party down the road, and there was an accordion, a little child-size accordion. But it was a nice one, like it was an Italian one. It wasn't a toy accordion. It was a fine Italian child-size accordion that somebody, like a local carpenter, had found in the attic of my neighbor, who had immigrated with her family to Canada from Holland when she was 11 years old, and they brought this accordion over with them. So there it was at the New Year's Day party or whatever it was, and I picked it up, and my friend Susie played the flute, and we just started playing. And because I played the piano, I could sort of figure it out. And I don't know, that accordion only had 12 buttons on it. Now the big ones you see have like 120 buttons on the left hand, but so it was easier to learn with only 12 buttons. So I really I loved the sound of that. I loved the idea of like a portable keyboard. So they said I could borrow it that day. And so away I went. I took that accordion home. And then when they started calling, looking for it, well, that was when I skipped town. Never to be seen again. Just kidding. No, that little accordion I gave to a young girl, and I give her accordion lessons now. And funnily enough, her own grandparents immigrated from Holland, and they were friends with the original owner of that accordion. So it all kind of came full circle.
Small world.
Yeah.
So you obviously can do a lot of different things as far as the instruments you play. So when it's time for you to sit down and write a song, what's the tool that you reach for first?
That's a really good question, Mike. I think lately the tool I've been reaching for is like my iPhone because the song is coming to me just like the melody. So I have to like make the voice memo of it before it's gone in thin air. So that's what I've been using lately. It's just the pure melody. And but in the past, like I would go through phases. And people just assume when you're a singer that you play guitar and that you're going to sing and play guitar, which, I mean, of course I do, but I would go through phases where I would compose with like just a stomp and the bones, just like a cappella like that. And for my first album, it was a lot with the accordion, because at that time I was really I was really into actually playing Jewish music, because I had this, that was a therapy for me. Like being an accordion player, like when I started, I had this book that I had all Eastern European tunes in it, and I just kind of taught myself how to play the accordion with that book. And so then I had the opportunity to go and study Jewish music at this camp called Klez Canada, and it's a week-long summer camp that happens every summer, and it's music, dance, theater. It's and the best klezmer musicians from all over the world, from the United States, Canada, from they would come from the Ukraine and Poland and Russia. Like it was an incredible international summer camp. And so I was really inspired by everything that I was learning there and all the books that I was taking home from there. And so my first album, although I'm Scottish, yeah, my first album sounds kind of Eastern European and klezmer-y, like in flavor, maybe French cafe-esque as well. But I forget what the question you asked me was. Now I'm off on a tangent. Oh, what instrument do I use to write? Yeah, it just really depends. I want to write more now. Like now that this album is out, the melodies are just coming to me, like whether it's a dream or like I'm walking around and it's coming in my mind. So yeah, I'll let you know the next song.
That's the hard thing. I know you worked so long and so hard on this album, and yeah, sometimes you can't turn off the inspiration. So you're kind of torn. It looks like between, well, you got to promote this one because you want people to hear it, but you also kind of want to move on to the next thing, right?
It's so true. It is so true. Yeah. Yeah, but I have those voice memos and I really should go back and like, set aside maybe an hour a week or something to like listen to some of those melodies that have been coming my way. So, yeah.
So it sounds like you write the music first, then go back and do lyrics.
Well,
if you're starting with a melody, that is.
Yeah, I think like one way I like to do it is either like there's this book, I forget what the name of the book was, but it's like write the title first and then the chorus and then the verses. So get the concept, like maybe even before you write the verses, like just point blank say what you want to express in them, like with a phrase, and then write it. So that's kind of how I was doing it for a while.
What did your childhood smell like? I stole that question, by the way. I like that one.
Where did you steal that question from?
I stole it from a defunct podcast in my city called the Gem City Podcast, and a gentleman named Terry Izzy Rock Martin, who used to interview musicians every Wednesday. And he stole it from somewhere else, but I'm going to give him credit because he's who I stole it from. And I find it to be a wonderful question that leads to good stories. So yeah, what did your childhood smell like?
Like without thinking too much, the first thing that came to my mind was manure because I grew up next to a dairy farm.
Ugh. That's unpleasant.
But I oddly do not mind that smell. Like it's oddly comforting to me.
Really?
Yeah.
You have a Pavlovian response now to livestock manure.
We would just go play in the barn, it was like that what we would do. This is terrible. Like, oh, there's my barn cat.
Hello, kitty. I love cats.
Yeah. No, I mean the dairy farm was next door, so it wasn't really that bad. My childhood really did not smell like manure all the time. Maybe just if they were spreading it on the fields, or if I would go looking for barn cats and taking them home, they might smell like manure for a couple of weeks, but then it would go away. But other than that, yeah, that's it. That's my answer. Yeah.
That's a good answer. You're the first person that's ever said manure. So cool.
I have this poster that a friend made that says the manure of life. Even if you're buried in, at least you're warm and I forget the quote. I don't have it hanging on my wall here, obviously. And sorry if you need to bleep that word. Sorry.
I will bleep it, but no worries. That's what post-production and editing are for. So how about we tell people who are listening where they might purchase a CD of Crossing the Causeway, as I'm holding it up here, but where could someone go get one of these from you for 20 Canadian dollars? Yeah,
it's a good deal with the exchange rate. It's available on Bandcamp. Also, yeah, if you just want the digital copy, there is a digital version of the liner notes that come with it. But like, actually, don't you find that the physical thing, I know, yeah, it's just, there's something about it. It's an art object. I did the cover myself and all the little drawings inside. I feel like, and I paid extra for the matte finish. It's kind of like a nice little thing, right?
No, I remember as a teenager going to the record store, buying a CD, coming home, taking the plastic off, reading the liner notes, right? Looking at all the pictures, looking at all the lyrics. And listeners, I know that a lot of you probably don't use CDs anymore, but Mary Beth, you can take my CDs from my cold dead hands. I still love them. I still buy them, and I still get my music printed on them. But there's nothing like just listening to the music and reading along and so listeners, if you don't make music, you might not know this, but it actually costs us a lot more money to generate CDs with liner note booklets, right? The more pages you put in the CD, the more the production costs. And you've given us a very nice booklet with lyrics, not just lyrics, but stories that put the songs in the context. It's a very nice package. It's not huge. It's a very nice package. I did not know that you did all those illustrations yourself. You're really talented. I can't draw nothing, but like this drawing of the hands and the bones, that's really good.
I will admit that was those ones, the ones of the hands with the little pocket-sized instruments, were done by an artist in Venezuela by the name of Yozart. So, yeah. So, sorry about that.
Oh, no, you don't have to apologize.
I give too much credit for myself.
You did these party ones, though, right?
I did, yeah.
Those are nice, too. And the picture on the cover is an illustration of you with an accordion on your back and a guitar in your hand about to cross the causeway. And as I open the disc, I see that it is based on an actual picture. So it's a thing that actually happened. I love it. I'm glad that you sent me one. Thank you.
Oh, thanks
People
again.
should go get it. Go to the Bandcamp page. I'm going to read the address real quick. It is Mary Beth Carty, all one word, .bandcamp.com. And I'll link to that in the show notes, and I will also link to your website in the show notes. Where else can people find you if they wanted to follow you on social media?
Yeah, well, I have a cool email list, and like I say, if you prefer to send an e-transfer or PayPal, like just get in touch with me directly via email. My email's on my website, but I'm also, of course, on Instagram, and I have a Facebook page as well. I'm not really on TikTok. I signed up, but I'm not really there. Yeah, and you can, of course, if you would like to listen to my music on Spotify or Tidal, and for some reason the new album did not make it to iTunes, but it's on YouTube Music, and I have a new music video out as well on YouTube. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. I will find that music video and link to it in the show notes. So listeners, you have the ability to go listen to this. If you like it, swing over to Mary Beth's Bandcamp page and plunk down $20 Canadian for a hard copy. That will help Mary Beth Carty to continue making music. Right?
Thank you so much, Mike. It's so true.
All right. Well, we're going to take a brief little break, listeners. This is the end of this episode. And if you haven't had enough of Mary Beth Carty, she, as you might have heard earlier in this podcast, she speaks French. I speak French, so we're going to have a conversation in French, and I'm going to try to make it a little bit different from the first one, just in case you're bilingual. I don't want you to get bored. But thanks, Mary Beth, for doing this, and yeah, let's go back at it.
Yay.
Thanks again to Mary Beth Carty for talking to me. If you haven't had enough of Mary Beth and you'd like to hear more about her, and you happen to understand French, I really invite you to come back for the next episode, and we'll be having a similar conversation in French, but we're going to cover a little bit of different ground. If you like this podcast, I would love it if you would like or subscribe wherever you happen to listen to podcasts like this one. The French language episode with Mary Beth will be up this coming Monday. If that is not a language you understand, you can look forward to the next English language podcast next Wednesday. Have a lovely weekend.